If you're a caregiver, a helper, or even a really strong carer, it's quite possible that you've been feeling tapped out recently. With everything going on in the world, it's not a stretch to say that it's been a challenge to hold things for others while also holding your own stuff. Now, when the things that we hold for others involve intense pain and suffering and trials, we can experience a level of done and over it that can impact the way that we show up, and this is known as compassion fatigue. Today, we're going to be talking about compassion fatigue, how it comes on, how to identify it, and how to combat it. And we're going to do it makeup and mental health style. So if you're interested, just keep watching. Alrighty. Let's do it. Hi there, my name is Dr. Erika, and on this channel, we encourage radical change to inspire far-reaching impact. Today, we're talking a little bit about compassion fatigue while we do our makeup. So let's prep a little bit. I have a feeling I'm gonna be out in the elements today, and so I'm gonna use a little mattifying primer. I just picked this up, so we'll see how this works. All right, now with compassion fatigue, when we provide care to others, we have to be really mindful of not pouring from our reserve without being filled back up, which is easy to do when we don't exactly know and understand what we need to be filled back up. This level of caregiving can happen both in a professional sense and personal. And folks that can experience compassion fatigue include mental health professionals, doctors, nurses, home health aides, social workers, law enforcement, teachers, daycare staff, community leaders, anyone who is providing a certain level of care to another. And so personally, that can include your parents, siblings, grandparents, etc. Again, anyone you're providing a level of care to. Now, when we pour out, especially in situations where we can hear or be exposed to others' trauma or challenges, we're more susceptible to compassion fatigue because we're confronted with the reality that other people face and are oftentimes charged with supporting them during that time. So the long and short of it is that we get tired, not necessarily tired of what we do or what we're being asked to do, but we get tired of caring to the high degree and level that we're being asked to care and prioritize other people's cares, needs, and wants above our own. Now, if this happened one evening and you found that you bounced back pretty easily, you could chalk it up to just a bad day. But when you notice that you began to see your job or your personal relationships impacted on the daily, and these feelings of not really desiring anymore what you really thought that you loved to do, you've got the beginnings of being really worn out. This can come from having heard for the third or fourth time this week about the impact of someone's kind of absent father on their current relationships, or cleaning the wound of your third gunshot victim this morning, and you fail to really see the individuals that you're being asked to work with. You see them as another case and not as an individual case. Now, in the field, there are differing levels of thought around the level of awareness that those in the helping professions actually have around how to guard themselves against compassion fatigue. One traumatologist, J. Eric Gentry, suggests that those who enter or are really even attracted to the helping professions in the first place are those who actually come into the field with symptoms of compassion fatigue because they have some desire to address some area of their life where they've been caring for someone already. I think I might be able to agree with that. So it's suggested that whether it is some level of identification with helplessness, suffering, or trauma experienced by those that we serve, or a desire to heal those who represent others in our lives in need of healing, we can certainly recognize that as helpers, we have learned to care for the needs of others and those around us before we really take care of our own needs. And that's something we have to unlearn. So let's do a quick little assessment. Nothing too official. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being not so much or the absolute worst, and 10 being an absolute boss, winning all the awards, would you say that you have a daily sustainable self-care structure or practices in your life? I'll wait. All right. Truth be told, I'm probably at about a 5.75 myself. So one of the things that we have to keep in mind is if we're at the point where we sense that we might be experiencing burnout or compassion fatigue, most likely we already are and have been for a little while. So as with most things, some level of awareness and acknowledgement is actually going to be our first step. So yes, girl, you's tired. We tired, okay? You are not Superwoman, contrary to popular belief. And Black Panther is dead, King. He's dead, okay? So we don't have to take on kind of some of those identities that are imposed on us by society, by ourselves, by our family. But acknowledging the fact that that's something that we might do is super important. So admitting that we have a problem is the first step. Now, this is fair warning, though, that awareness can lead to certain insights regarding aspects of our past that can keep us from shifting, healing, and feeling relief. And so it's important to know that those things can come up, but awareness is still crucial to us being able to address compassion fatigue. Now, a quite common and understandable coping mechanism in caregiving is to simply stuff the overwhelming emotions. Stuff them deep, deep down where no one can see or access them. And to keep doing that, stuffing them below the surface repeatedly in our work. So diving deeper in, helping more folks, taking on more clients and work than we can afford to do, to stay distracted and busy. I'm talking about myself. And we oftentimes think, how can I keep going, right? Like, what else can I do? What else can I pile on my plate to just keep going, keep pushing, hoping that something will change or shift and allow us to have some sense of relief. But what's really important to note is that eventually these emotions refuse to be ignored. And all too often, not unlike what we see with some of the folks that we are helping, there are psychological and physiological crises that occur as a result of really not addressing the things that are concerning us. Whew, picked up a lot of brown there. Now, of course, knowledge is power. So let's talk a little bit about some of the symptoms that we can notice around compassion fatigue so we can be aware. So compassion fatigue symptoms are usually elevated displays of stress resulting from the caregiving work that we do every day day in and day out. And so while these symptoms are oftentimes disruptive and depressive or irritating, naming these symptoms and those negative effects that they could have on our lives can actually lead to a positive change. It can lead to some level of professional, personal transformation, and even higher levels of resiliency. Again, the more that we know, the more that we can address them. All right. So one is we notice that we start to blame, and that is excessive blaming on things, people. This floor was over here flooring, and that's why we slipped, right? We start to do all kinds of stuff like that. We notice that we are bottling up our emotions and even isolating ourselves from other people so that we don't have to express ourselves to them. I don't know what it is about us as helpers. We like to be able to support folks with some of their things, but we definitely don't like to share out. We tend to isolate ourselves from other people. We think of ourselves as the folks that are supposed to be providing the help, and we don't want to burden other people with the things that we're going through. And so we don't reach out, but tend to withdraw so as others aren't impacted by our negative mood and feelings. It's going to be dark, but we're already here, so let's go. We start to complain a lot more than we usually do or have in the past, or that may be warranted, right? Everything is bugging us. Everything is a problem. We actually may start to use things like substances, alcohol, drugs to self-medicate as opposed to seeking help. Again, or talking with someone. So, we go from maybe a couple of glasses a week to, a couple of glasses a day. And we find that it really begins to impact our functioning. We ignore aspects of self-care and our ADLs, or activities of daily living, that we usually didn't. So we might reduce our number of showers or refuse to wash clothes and end up wearing the same clothes for the third, fourth day in a row. We neglect our appearance. So we may stop brushing our teeth or combing our hair. We also might begin to have unexplainable physical ailments or somatic complaints. So gastrointestinal issues, upset stomach. We might find ourselves with a lingering cold that we just can't shake. We also might start to take on some depressive symptoms. We find that we have difficulty enjoying things that once were super enjoyable or pleasurable activities. We begin to feel sad and withdrawn. We also, because we've made this work our life's work, we slip into some feelings of denial. And we do this in an effort to kind of make sure that we hang on to our reality, right? For self-preservation. If I am getting tired and worn out of my career, my job, my life's work, what the hell does that mean? And so we start to kind of deny that these symptoms and feelings and experiences are happening for us. And some folks may experience reoccurring nightmares related to patients. They may have flashbacks of things that have happened during the week. And all of those are signs that we are overworked. All right. I'm not 100% mad at it. Now, at our actual jobs or in our actual careers, we might also start to see some evidence of this too. So you may start to call out more. You usually never missed. You got the award for, never taking a vacation, which is not okay. But now all of a sudden you are calling out more. And finding that you are absent more from work. You might also note that relationships with coworkers have changed. You've started to have much shorter conversation, water cooler conversation, and avoid certain relationships that you may not have avoided before. You stop being able to really work well with others. And part of that is because of some of that isolation that you might be engaging in. You might start to kind of be a little more willing to break certain rules at work. Like, I don't know, if your notes are supposed to be done before you leave, you out without having registered a single DAP note. You notice more aggressive, passive-aggressive behaviors amongst your coworkers, and really kind of this development of this unhealthy work environment. Everybody and their mom is missing deadlines and not respecting kind of the culture that you may have previously established and really appreciated. And there starts to be this sense that there's no going back. There's no hope that things will not change or will not get better. And probably like a lack of trust, whether that be in each other or management, that things will actually improve or that it's even possible, because it seems so far gone at that point. Now we know that there are things that we need to look for. Let's talk a little bit about healing. So actually addressing compassion fatigue and healing begins by engaging in such practices as regular exercise, regular sleep, healthy eating habits, and active rest, as well as looking and taking a look at some of those relationships that we have that are allowing us outlets, like being able to engage in enjoyable social activities and keeping connection that fills us. I see what we're doing here. We're going for like an 80s look. I'm catching up. Okay. One of the first things that we need to do, which is probably going to become one of my mantras, is you need to be kind to yourself. You need to recognize that, you didn't choose this. This life chose you, right? This is something that happens when you go into the business of caring for folks. And so who knew? Part of how we address things is to know more. And so I'm glad we're talking about it today. We want to definitely accept where we are, whether we are fully burnt out, on our way, need to turn around. And we need to be aware of where we are at all times. And so if that looks like journaling or documenting or jotting a little note on the big calendar at work, it's helpful for us to know where we are, so that we can recognize when we need to shift. I think that's more what I wanted to do. It's important for us to recognize that those who are closest to us may not always be able to be present for us in the way that we would like or expect. Oftentimes, they are not members of the helping profession. They will not understand, and they will expect you as a helper to be able to help yourself, which you and I both know can be a little tricky and challenging. But it's important that you don't expect them to show up in the same way that you may show up for them, and expect that you may have to educate them on what you need to be able to feel supported and valued and seen in that relationship. Just fair warning. You definitely want to make sure that you keep contact with those relationships that really feel you and validate you. And so that may be other helpers in the field that can recognize what is needed and be a certain level of support. It could be helpful to also have a group of other folks who acknowledge that they also are managing or trying to address compassion fatigue. that can build a sense of togetherness. It can validate that you aren't alone in this and that this isn't something that just you experience or need to be aware of. Also going to be super important that you clarify and constantly revisit your boundaries. So if you haven't thought a lot about boundaries or creating boundaries, scroll up and go and check out the video that we did on boundaries and creating and maintaining boundaries. Boundaries are going to be super important as you move forward, as you're going to have to draw some lines, as you're going to have to realize that you can't pour from an empty cup, that you can't give necessarily to those that are asking you to give in the way that they're asking you to. What is going to work for you is what's going to work for you, and that's it. And you have to be able to draw those lines. Also, you want to get into the habit of expressing your needs verbally. I know that you listen to a lot of folks, and this time you're going to have to talk, and folks need to listen to you. And so people can't oftentimes read our minds, even though we can read theirs and have learned to anticipate their every need and move. Other folks aren't like us. And so we need to get in the habit of expressing what we need to folks and being able to say it out loud. If you're able to, taking some action around changing your environment can be super, super helpful. Making some changes to your room, getting a feng shui element, or even kind of moving and repositioning yourself away from toxic people, getting close to a window, all those things can help to kind of shift and address some of those feelings related to compassion fatigue. So we want to make sure that we engage in healthy activity as well. So finding an activity that you enjoy, one that is a nice balance of some active cardio or things to get your heart rate going, as well as things to kind of bring your heart rate down, like meditation and yoga. We definitely want to be mindful of what we put in our body. I don't know about anybody else, but once I have carbs, I'm down for the count. And so if I know that carbs are going to kind of bring down my energy, that may be a food that I want to avoid, especially if I'm already feeling burnt out and sluggish. Getting plenty of leafy greens and healthy vegetables. Things that fuel our body is going to be important. The other thing is water, water, water. Just saying. Drinking plenty of water on a daily basis can help hydrate you. Your brain needs it to function. Your organs need water to function. And so making sure that you stay hydrated can be super important for your mood and energy. You also want to essentially hire yourself to be your manager. A manager's job is to be able to filter in what we say yes to and what we say no to. So part of it is learning how to say no. Now, I am preaching to myself because it's one of the things that can be really hard when you're a helper. You feel like you're supposed to say yes to everything, but you literally cannot. It is impossible for you to say yes to absolutely everything. Learning the power of no is going to be super important. Taking some time for mindful reflection is also going to be really important. Mindful reflection allows us to be aware of how we feel, how our body feels, what we're thinking, and how certain situations impact or influence that change that can happen when we are confronted with things that unnerve us or disrupt a certain level of either like relaxation or peace that we've achieved. We want to make sure that we have developed and put in place a healthy support system. One cannot save the world alone, right? And so being able to have people that we can depend on and again, recognize the level of support that they can provide, But recognizing that we have people that we can depend on is going to be super important and helpful to us in our journey. We want that healthy support system to include people that can contribute to developing your view of the work that you do, can build that compassion satisfaction, which is essentially the recognition that you do a good job, that you are out here making a difference and helping to remind you why you got into the profession in the first place. You want people who listen well, who care about you and your well-being, who make it a point to affirm you. It's super important. Another thing that we want to definitely do is try to become more proactive as opposed to reactive. When we can take as much pre-planning and forethought around our well-being, we don't have to lash out when it's far too late. Whoop, almost lost it. All right. Last couple of things. We definitely want to live a balanced life. We can't be all work, all play, and it's important for us to acknowledge that. We want to gather with folks. We want to be alone and have some of that alone time. We want to travel. We want to eat well. We want to work hard, advance ourselves as we see fit. We just want to make sure that there's some balance. There should be an ongoing level of reflection and assessment as to whether we've got too much on one side of the scale and not enough on the other. It's okay to make those adjustments as we see that there's a need. Now, last but certainly not least, it's going to be important that you hold on to your emotional reserve. Scroll up to emotional currency. You have to pick your battles. We can't be out here caping for everybody that needs us, right? We have to decide what causes, what initiatives, what arguments, what things that we're actively going to engage in that, again, allow us to have some type of security around the emotional energy that we're putting out. Now, I'm not saying that this is an exhaustive list, and I think that's the biggest takeaway that I want folks to have around self-care and being able to address their needs. Self-care is essentially whatever you need to do to make sure that you can show up and show out on a daily basis. If that looks like massages for you, all right, cool. If that looks like you being alone with kind of your vinyl records and putting on music and dancing the night away, do that. If that looks like indulging in a pint of the salted caramel ice cream from Taliente or gelato from Taliente, clearly I'm speaking from experience, do that too. Whatever you need to be able to take care of yourself, to recharge, replenish, so that you can keep doing the great work that you need to do that for self-care. And so I'd love to hear what you will add to the list. Feel free to drop it in the comments below. If you have enjoyed this content and would like to see more about how psychology can walk and talk and show up in your everyday life, please feel free to subscribe, drop us a comment, leave us a message, and we'll see you soon.